Welcome to Making Sense of the Madness. It is the 9/11 anniversary episode, and it is my pleasure to speak with Larry Klayman, who did utterly important and intrinsic work on 9/11 truth before there was a 9/11 truth movement. Also the founder of Judicial Watch, currently the founder of Freedom Watch. You're not going to want to miss it. Buckle up and get ready to make sense of the madness.
At a time when bin Laden was the most wanted man in the world, why would intelligence agencies stop their own investigations, especially as they were closing in on him? Robert Wright and others within the FBI also had their investigations into terrorism stopped prior to 9/11.
Since August of 1999, I've been working to legally expose the very real and foreseeable Middle Eastern terrorist threats to American citizens at home and abroad. From 1993 to 1999, I was assigned to the Chicago Division's Counterterrorism Task Force. The successful investigation, which was codenamed Vulgar Betrayal, V-U-L-G-A-R, Betrayal, led to the June 1998 seizure of $1.4 million of Middle Eastern terrorist funding. These funds were linked directly to Saudi businessman Yassin Qadi. On October 12, 2001, Yassin Qadi was designated by the United States government as a financial supporter of Osama bin Laden.
Larry Klayman of Judicial Watch initially tried to help get Wright's story to the proper authorities.
He wanted to come forward long before 9/11. We were taking those steps beginning last summer to do that. The FBI had 30 days to allow that to occur. They violated their own regulations. They covered it up. If you didn't hear me, I went specifically. I called the Attorney General's office just days after 9/11. I said, Dave Shippers and I represent a special agent of the FBI Chicago field office who has years of information about how the FBI did not do its job, did not in any way investigate in a meaningful way money laundering in the United States. You're now claiming you want to do this. I'd like to make them available to you, Attorney General Ashcroft. And I was met with a response by Michael Chertoff, head of the criminal division. We're tired of conspiracy theories.
Michael Chertoff will later become the head of Homeland Security, the department set up to fight the war on terror after 9/11. Wright was also restricted from telling any specifics about their investigation. Robert Wright was then prevented from working on terror investigations. So what happened to Wright?
He was demoted in and around the time period leading up to 9/11. He's working on innocuous, meaningless things. That's what he's doing. Yes. He's a paper pusher. It's because these monies were going through some very powerful U.S. banks with some very powerful interests in the United States. These banks knew or had reason to know that these monies were laundered by terrorists. And there are very significant potential conflicts of interest in both the Clinton and Bush administration, and in particular this Bush administration, who is as tight with Saudi Arabia as you can get.
And that was a part of my film Fabled Enemies that actually featured Mr. Klayman. Larry Klayman, thank you so much for joining us. Here we are.
My pleasure,
It is now
Jason. Thank you.
23 years later. Kind of hard to believe. I've got grays in my hair all over that I once did not. And, at the time, I was a 22-year-old kid. And, obviously this event not only shocked the United States, but the world. I was in New York at the time, even though it was upstate New York. Had a little bit more impact there. Before we even get going on how you initially got involved with FBI whistleblowers inside the system on 9/11, when the event occurred, what do you remember?
I was actually working out at Gold's Gym across the street from Judicial Watch. And I heard it on the intercom. There was music that was playing, and a woman interrupted a host and said, the first World Trade Center, a plane has just crashed into the World Trade Center. And then a few minutes later, she comes back and says, a second plane has crashed. And I said to myself, I was screaming, those effing terrorists, those effing terrorists, because it was quite obvious what had happened at that point in time. I went back to Judicial Watch and I turned on in our press room the television, and I saw the World Trade Center melt, come down. And at that point, everybody bailed out of Freedom Watch's office except me. And I was there, and I was trying to get a hold of my family, and I couldn't. I had a Nextel phone, still tried to, and couldn't do it. There was pandemonium in the streets. I looked out my window in the office because it faced towards the Pentagon. I could see smoke rising from that. I went out into the streets to try to go home. I lived in Georgetown at the time and couldn't get there really in time. So I went back to the office and just, waited. Went to the Holiday Inn and ultimately had some lunch. I did not know that a plane was headed in the direction of the U.S. Capitol, that plane that went down in Pennsylvania with the valiant passengers that took it down. And that's what I remember from that date. And thereafter, of course, we were hit, the United States. First, it occurred in South Florida with the National Enquirer, the people that owned that, with an anthrax attack. Then it happened on Capitol Hill. Postal workers were exposed to it. I wound up representing them because they were basically abandoned. Senators up on Capitol Hill also got this anthrax in the mail. They took care of themselves, but frankly, they let some of the postal workers die. They ultimately died. I brought a case for them against the government. And then, of course, everybody was worried about a follow-up attack. And I remember I was living in Great Falls at the time with my family. And it was recommended that you take plastic because they thought there was going to be a dirty bomb and put it over the windows. And we did that. And that was actually the reason that I moved everybody out of downtown Washington, because we felt Washington was going to be hit again with a major attack. And I got to tell you something, Jason. It's a miracle to this day that it hasn't been, because you go to Washington, you might think you're in Baghdad. I mean, frankly, in many ways. They have so many Somalis there. I don't know how they keep track of all of them. But they do have such a system of surveillance there where literally they pick up almost everything that's said on the sidewalk. I remember one time my wife lost her ID in front of the White House and she got a call. We know where you are. We'll come over and give you your ID, or driver's license. So, we are still under great risk. And of course, we know that with the open border, that something like 9/11 is bound to happen again, sooner rather than later. We haven't learned our lesson. And while you're 22 and remember this, a lot of the younger people that are in the streets right now protesting in favor of Hamas don't remember 9/11, and they don't care, because frankly, most of them, I would say, are probably drugged out. They really don't know what's going on, and other than they feel like going to a fun protest and busting things up and whatever. And it's an absolute disgrace that people have forgotten about that. It reminds me, to some extent, of people forgetting about the Holocaust deniers, saying, well, it never really happened, it can't happen again. I'll tell you, it can happen again. Just last week, I got threats on my texts, vehement anti-Semitic texts from people threatening to kill me. Unbelievable. White supremacist Hitler-type people. I know who they are. But these are tough times. And it's important for people to remember the lessons of 9/11. And the other aspect of it is that 9/11 was preventable. Sitting on the desk of George W. Bush was a intelligence report which predicted 9/11, that the World Trade Center would be hit or some other major target. I guess W was off working in the White House, working out in the White House gym. Dick Cheney, and that was the reason I voted, frankly, for that ticket. Notwithstanding, I wasn't going to vote for the Democrat. I don't tell people who to vote for, but I will never vote for a Democrat, frankly. Unless John Kennedy comes back with a second coming. But this is something that really was preventable, and it occurred, and Bush let it occur. Condoleezza Rice let it occur. They were negligent. They didn't have their eye on the ball. They were never held accountable for this, and it was a disgrace. frankly.
So let's get into your work with the FBI whistleblowers that were actually tracking at least the monetary network involving bin Laden, Operation Vulgar Betrayal, Yasin Qadi, etc. You gave that press conference. You actually talked about the relationship between the Bushes and the bin Ladens that had really taken place for decades. What was that case about?
Well, I represented two FBI agents, John Vincent and Robert Wright. Okay. And they were doing an investigation at their level, and they were able to determine money laundering from the Middle East that likely went into 9/11 or other terrorist acts. I was introduced to them by Dave Shippers, who was the impeachment manager. You might remember the lawyer representing the impeachment manager in the Clinton years. And he said, Larry, can you help them? And I tried to help them because the FBI, which was then being run by Robert Mueller, ring a bell, this corrupt hack named Robert Mueller, was trying to drive them out of the FBI because they had written a book which talked about how the FBI was dropping the ball and covering up, investigating money laundering from the Middle East to harm American citizens. Now, they also tried to wire a Muslim agent in that investigation, and the Muslim agent had told them Muslims don't rat out other Muslims, and that was an issue at the time. So I was trying to keep them from being thrown out of the FBI, which we succeeded at doing, at Freedom Watch. And I went to see Senator Arlen Specter. By the way, all this is in my book, Whores. Why I fought the establishment, Whores. You can still get it on Amazon. My autobiography. I went to see Arlen Specter, who was on the Senate Intelligence Committee at the time, and Specter was supposed to intervene on behalf of my clients. I don't think he did ever. He was more interested in the suit I was wearing at the time. I wanted to see where he could get one. I had been in Brazil on another matter, but that's an aside. But there never really was any serious investigation of what occurred. There was an agent out of Minnesota who had information about what was going to happen on her laptop, an FBI agent, and that was suppressed as well. And they attempted to drum her out of the FBI as well. I think they succeeded. And it shows you that this corruption with the FBI is nothing new. The FBI is corrupt top to bottom. I mean, the agents are, many good agents, like my clients, Robert Wright and John Vincent. John Vincent later came to work with me at Judicial Watch. He was the head of the Chicago office, the Midwestern office. But at the highest level, the FBI has been corrupt almost from its inception, including J. Edgar Hoover, for that matter. We know some of the things that he did, with Martin Luther King and John Kennedy, blackmailing them and that kind of thing. It is simply an evil agency. It is evil at the top. And they covered all this up at the time.
We got to take a break. We're going to come back. We're with Larry Klayman. This is the 9/11 anniversary episode. More Making Sense of the Madness after this.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most precious assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott Precious Metals at 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900.
Don't let them win. Patriot TV is committed to delivering the truth. America's new network for patriots is growing fast, and we'd love you to join us as a member of Patriot TV. Your support makes it possible for us to continue to deliver unbiased reporting, thought-provoking discussions, and insights you won't find anywhere else. From in-depth interviews to behind-the-scenes footage, Patriot TV brings you closer to the voices shaping our nation's future. Whether it's political developments, cultural shifts, or global affairs, Patriot TV keeps you informed and empowered. As a member of Patriot TV, you'll get perks like personal invitations to exclusive Patriot TV events, where you can gather and network with like-minded Americans. We'll also host online events throughout the year with General Flynn, who's committed to host live Q&A webinars where callers like you can ask him questions and get real answers. Access to these events will be members only. So, go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member. It's fast and easy. We have a great membership option starting at just $9.99 a month, or save with our annual membership for only $99, or take advantage of the best value, the 2-year membership for just $159. Go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member. It's fast and easy. Do your part to make sure the truth gets out to all patriots and help ensure future programming. Become a member today. Just go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member, join today.
And we are back. We are with Larry Klayman. And Larry, I've done films on this. I've researched it, for 20 plus years. To me, personally, I think it goes beyond just letting it happen on purpose. I think that we have an international intelligence operation. I think that obviously, the funding of the networks through Saudi Arabia, but also through Pakistan and the Pakistani ISI. In fact, I argue that there's really more of a connection between Pakistan and bin Laden, especially when you find out, I think it was January of 2002 when Dan Rather did that piece on CBS where they went to the hospital where it was claimed that bin Laden was getting dialysis protected by Pakistani military on the eve of 9/11. They had doctors, nurses in that piece, all with their faces covered. Obviously, if you believe, and there's some contention there. There's the Hirsch version of where they find bin Laden. He's in Pakistan. He's right next to a military base. It's certainly the network in which he works with U.S. and British intelligence in the 70s, 80s, and even 90s against the Russians, etc. So you have that link up. You have the drills running that day on 9/11 inside the United States. You also seem to have some kind of an Israeli operative element to all of this. You had that 5-piece Fox News with Carl Cameron and later Tony Snow, who would become the press secretary. On top of that, all those documents, at least to some extent, were declassified to a level, I think, 5-6 years ago, where we got a little more insight into that. What are your thoughts on how this thing went down? Because there are so many elements.
Well, let me say this
is a
too,
large-scale event. Go ahead.
I do believe that the terrorists were radical Islamic motivator people, basically. But I also believe that there's a significant chance that there was inside help, from our own government. Why did that tower melt so easily? It was designed not to melt like that, and that's never been explained. And of course, I know because I represented some of the families in the Oklahoma City bombing years earlier, where the FBI and other agencies cleared out of the federal building before it was blown up. This was over, Nichols and others that were involved at that time, in alleged terrorism,
Larry,
against
let me
the
jump
government.
in on that because, I think that's important. So first of all, you have the 93 World Trade Center bombing, where you have Ahmad
Yeah.
Salam. That's their insider from former Egyptian intelligence officer, army officer overseas. He's working with John Antisev. He helps build the bomb. And he wanted to build a fake one, and once they told him not to, he starts taping their conversations. You have at least, I would say, FBI involvement in that one. But once again, it's kind of been erased from history. Then you look at 95, like you said, at OKC, they're running a drill. The ATF gets calls not to go to work that morning. You can clearly see the bomb trucks going in. And actually, the governor, Frank Keating, at the time, went on television and said that they had taken several explosive devices out of the building. So once again, there's another event that clearly we were lied to about. You could go on and on about that, from John Doe number 2 to the tapes that day, etc. I just did a show on that the other day. But when you get to 9/11, it's not just one event, right? You just alluded to the fact, the towers coming down, Building 7. You yourself look at the Pentagon. This is a very multi-pronged thing, correct?
Oh, yeah. Well, let's back up a little bit, too, and historically, is that we all know that Franklin Roosevelt had more than an inkling that Pearl Harbor was going to happen, okay? And he allowed it to happen because he wanted to force the United States into World War II, because the American people were very isolationist at that time. Is that I think there's a significant possibility that people inside our own so-called government, I call it a so-called government because I don't consider it to be our government anymore, allowed this to happen, cleared the decks, maybe collaborated in it, so we could justify wars in the Middle East. But then when it happened, what did George W. Bush do? He didn't go against bin Laden. We had bin Laden cornered in Tora Bora. He could have taken bin Laden out at that time. Clinton could have done it years earlier. You might remember he attacked pharmaceutical factories and other things, which his wag the dog when he was getting impeached. So our government, is frequently culpable in these things. And let's go to the present. I know this is a little bit off the point, but COVID-19. We created the seeds, the SARS virus, in our lab in Fort Detrick, Maryland. We gave it to the Chinese in Wuhan. And we had reason to know that that lab was a bioweapons lab, much like our Fort Detrick lab is. We violate international law as well. And that's why we've never gotten any definitive response or information from our government as to the source of what occurred in Wuhan, because we are culpable as well. And in fact, the Chinese at the beginning said, well, why are you blaming us? Because you're part of this. So this is what we're dealing with. Our government, either directly or indirectly, works against the interests of the American people to serve its own interests. And it is extremely dangerous that that's happening. And as we now face the possibility of a total leftist takeover with Kamala Harris and the other socialists and communists that she'll bring in, notwithstanding all the LGBTQ2 characters that are going to come in to allow for that being pushed onto our kids and everything else, is that we have to recognize that 9/11 is an example of how our government dropped the ball. I wrote a book, I was the editor of it at Judicial Watch, called Fatal Neglect, and why and how our government failed to protect us from terrorism. I think you can still get it, on Amazon and on the internet. And you could see in that book what we outlined was that everything that the 9/11 report found was publicly available and that could have been discerned prior to 9/11 in terms of the root causes of allowing 9/11 to happen. So you have to ask yourself this question: did our so-called government drop the ball on purpose? And much like it dropped the ball, to put it nicely, with regard to the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, I believe that the Harris regime, it's now the Harris regime, wanted Trump dead, and they created the condition for someone to take a crack at Trump by not having adequate security for him.
Well, I'll say this. Finally, Melania has stepped up, gave like a 15 or 20-second message actually asking about the attempted assassination of her husband, which I do think is long overdue. And again, I think that you're being generous. I think when you look at the events, yes, they're creating the atmosphere, but there's more than a little bit of a push. And then you look at something like the 9/11 Commission. I mean, it is a cartoon level cover up. So we're going to take a break. When we come back,
Many over time, the Kennedy Commission. Yeah, same thing. I mean, that's the way it goes.
I mean, Lee Hamilton's on both, right? And he's also on the one for Iran-Contra. And it was a big joke to him and Thomas Keane. But you're actually going to see that because we're going to play a clip of Fabled Enemies involving the 9/11 Commission and Max Cleland, who was originally on the 9/11 Commission. But it was such a farce that he had to step down. Got pretty angry on Wolf Blitzer. We'll be back with more Making Sense of the Madness after this.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, It's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
Did you know that thousands of authors across the country have written books and published them with Page Publishing? If you've written a book, Page Publishing can help you through the process. We cut through the confusion of the publishing world to make it easy for you. If we decide to publish your book, your work ends and ours begins. From copy editing and proofing to typesetting and book cover art, we get you printed, distributed, and sold on Amazon, Apple iTunes, and in bookstores across the country. We'll even help you promote your book. That's right, we do all this for you. Biography, self-help, mystery, novels, sci-fi, even a children's book. No matter what genre, Page Publishing can bring your book to life. Call today for your free author submission kit and find out how you can be the next published author at Page Publishing.
Call for your free author submission kit at 855-993-2114. That's 855-993-2114.
Attention patriotic businesses. Do you want to see your sales skyrocket by selling your products or services to like-minded patriots? For more information on advertising on America's new network of proud American businesses, email us at advertise@patriot.tv.
The President has said only a minority of the commission can see a minority of the documents, and then they have to clear what they're going to say to the rest of the commission with the White House.
If you're one of those 4 that gets to see these documents, would that change your opinion?
No, they don't want any more eyeballs to see their documents than they can possibly get away with. It's a scam. It's absolutely disgusting.
Cleland would later resign.
Well, they have something to cover up, and the 9/11 Commission, of course, was a master cover-up. We know that. The question is what it was covering up.
I don't believe the reports on September 11th put out by the 9/11 Commission or by Congress. I've seen one put out by the 9/11 Commission, and it was basically hundreds of pages of nothing. It was very generic. It was very indirect, indistinct, devoid of facts, devoid of hard positions. It was things like mistakes were made. We need to improve human intelligence. This is nothing. I mean, it's like, yes, I stand for truth, justice, and the American way, but it was vapid. It was a waste of time and money, but gives the impression that, oh yes, the government is doing something, the government is studying the issue.
Well, what makes me really disappointed, and that's an understatement, is that Congress's role is oversight. And Congress, even today, you'll see members of Congress saying, well, we haven't implemented everything that the 9/11 Commission recommended. And the 9/11 commissioners have said that the administration obstructed them, lied to them.
The staff statements were described by various commissioners to be an indictment of the FBI in particular, but also an indictment of the CIA.
I don't think the chairman and I have ever characterized the staff statements as an indictment. It's possible others have done that. We have not. And Tom and I have heard repeated praises from people in your business, in the media business, thanking us for the quality of those statements.
I would second that, and by the way, I never, ever would correct the vice chairman, but I'm afraid I did characterize one of those statements as an indictment.
And we are back. And when you look at the 9/11 Commission, I mean, again, it seems like a whitewash. They don't bring up Building 7. If anything, for me, what was worthwhile were the hearings where you would get some admissions to some of the drills. You mentioned warnings, right? You have Amalgam Virgo going on the summer before 9/11 with Bin Laden on the cover of it, and with a hijacked aircraft coming from Alaska and ramming into the Capitol. I mean, that's just one part of the drill, but it's all laid out there. Yeah, go ahead.
I know, Jason. Sometimes I'm getting far afield, but it's a pattern in practice. And I'm a lawyer of many years, a trial lawyer, and you can prove a fact to be true by a pattern in practice of similar conduct. Okay, let me give you another example. Everything's been covered up by the FBI and our intelligence agencies. Since I've been a little boy too, since I've been about 10, when John Kennedy was assassinated. But look at the massacre in Las Vegas with Stephen Paddock. Okay, killing tens of people, wounding hundreds from the Mandalay Bay. They immediately go into Paddock's apartment in Mesquite, Nevada, and clean it out, the FBI. Why? Because he likely was an FBI informant or an agent or some government agents. It was covered up. There is always a U.S. government involvement in these things, whether it's at the top or whether it's people at mid-level or whether it's the CIA, who most people believe killed John Kennedy because they didn't think he was strong enough with communism. Our government, frankly, is evil. It is pure evil. And all this stuff gets covered up because you know what? The intelligence agencies, excuse the French, have on everybody in Washington, D.C. and blackmail them, including judges. That was also true in my case involving the NSA. The judge who originally enjoined the NSA under Obama later dismissed the case inexplicably before discovery, and I had found out from an informant that, in fact, they had stuff on him. So this is what it is: mutual assured destruction. It may not be everybody involved in it, but the individuals and in the intelligence agencies and the FBI and the NSA that are behind a lot of this stuff, the deep state, have on everybody, and they'll use it, whether it's sexual picadillos or financial crimes or whatever. And they have it on Supreme Court justices too. I know that for a fact. And that explains the conduct. It explains the conduct of John Roberts frequently, frankly. There are all kinds of stuff on him. Many people have thought that he's a closet gay all these years. Now, that's not a big deal anymore. You'll get a trophy if you're gay in today's day and age, get an award. But in his generation, that was something he didn't want to come out. And consequently...
And by the way, Larry, some people want to maintain their families as well. It's not just about like the popular kid on the block. And you mentioned, the blackmail tactic. I want to take it back to Paddock for a moment. Bare minimum, the guy's an arms dealer and working with all sorts of intelligence agents and nefarious individuals. And again, the military industrial complex. That's what all the evidence showed there. I mean, the guy had tannerite in his car. He was obviously with prostitutes there. His wife was from another country. There were so many different anomalies. And it seems in the vast majority of these cases, these people don't get to talk after the fact either.
Well, let me throw out another one. The death of Antonin Scalia, okay? No autopsy, nothing. Ron Brown, this is something that put me on the map, why he was killed at the time. Okay, that was likely an inside job as well. He was being investigated. He had all kinds of stuff on Clinton, taking money from the Chinese. He goes down mysteriously in Serbia or whatever, in Croatia, and no one finds out the cause of his death. So this is a pattern because there's always some government involvement in what went on, and they don't want it to get out. And it's the culprits, and we saw what they did with President Trump, are at the CIA, the National Security Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the FBI. Okay, this is the deep state. These are the people that own the people in Washington. If they get out of line, they will destroy them, if not kill them. And that's a fact of life. And look at what the FBI Hoover did to Martin Luther King, okay, and others. We still don't know who killed Martin Luther King. The King family doesn't believe it was James Earl Ray. It probably was the FBI that killed him. Hoover probably killed him, frankly. So this is what we're dealing with. And the government is the enemy of the people. And it was Ronald Reagan who said the scariest words in the English language are, "Hi, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help you." Frankly, don't want your help. I really don't. And that's why we have a Freedom Watch. And that's why we have our own citizens grand jury looking into the assassination of Donald Trump. And it's why people should come forward and take control themselves. It's why people should not be looking for the political messiah, whether it's Donald Trump or anybody else. And even if he's elected, he's only there for 4 years. Is that we need to do it for ourselves. Our founding fathers didn't look to King George to help him out. help themselves out. They had to take matters into their own hands. And I'm suggesting that we can do it peacefully and legally. And I'm hoping people will join us at freedomwatchusa.org and contribute with tax-deductible contributions, because we're not doing as well as we should financially, because the Republicans are siphoning away a lot of money, promising things that they'll never deliver.
Which is unfortunate because, on one end, obviously I hate both parties. I can't stand them. Like you said, the Republicans, I mean, they're pretty much just as bad as the Democrats, although the Democrats have gone over the top. You got a handful of
No,
people
the
in
Democrats
there.
are pure evil. The Republicans are simply they're simply a racketeering, money-raising enterprise, okay, which does nothing.
I mean, I think there's a lot, right? I mean, there's a few people that are somewhat genuine, the Rand Pauls, the Mike Lees, but on the left, there's still the Dennis Kuciniches out there. There are still, I think, just a handful of politicians with any, I guess, any reasonable semblance to the Constitution and Bill of Rights, but it's been pretty much eviscerated. And let's talk about Trump, because I don't think we can believe in saviors.
Yeah.
I think he's got his problems too. But let's say somehow you get him in there. He's promised the 9/11 documents on top of the JFK, the MLK. I don't know that he's going to deliver on that. If I really believed he was going to deliver that on Larry, I'd be out in the streets.
He's not going to deliver on that because he's not delivering because they'll kill him. No, he knows that. They'll kill him. Okay, if he does that, you won't even find out about UFOs. Okay, I mean, we know they exist. Okay, you won't find out about that either. Okay, so this has been covered up for years. Every government in the world admits their existence, but our own. And who knows the reason for that? And if we can send spacecraft to other planets can send spacecraft to our. And why do they hang out? I know I'm getting off the point at Area 51 and military installations, because frankly, they don't trust the human race in all likelihood. We kill ourselves, so they're concerned, in my opinion. But the point being is that you don't ever get the truth from the government. You don't get it, and don't expect it. So we better do it for ourselves. And it's not just getting the truth. My former group, which I left to run for the Senate in Florida in 2003, they get documents. That's fine, but they don't do much with the documents. We need to actually take action with documents, without documents, with whistleblowers, whatever. And at Freedom Watch, we're not afraid. So I hope people will join us at freedomwatchusa.org. I'll call Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland what they are: criminals. They're criminals. And these people need to be held accountable. We intend to hold them accountable.
So you talk about whistleblowers, and you started saying there's just no chance we're getting the 9/11 documents, which is upsetting to me. I'm not going to lie. For me, when I first got into this, as naive as I was, Larry, again in my 20s, I thought we were going to break the case. I thought there was going to be a real investigation. I thought people were going to jail. I thought, we were going to be able to beat this thing. As the 5th anniversary went on and we got closer, 6, 7 years out, I realized that this was just going to be kind of a part of history, right? And still very upsetting. And I still want to see some kind of criminal culpability. I don't know that I ever will, but isn't that the issue, right? Like you said, we never get the truth about these things. And when so many of these operations involve things like, for instance, when I talk about the drills on 9/11, not just the previous ones, they're running them out of Iron Mountain right now. I've got the National Reconnaissance Office tapes of this. I mean, that's probably the best I'm going to get. But other than those communications, you don't have the backstory. You don't have the eyewitness testimony. You don't have the classified modes of these things. I do know the drills, although they always tried to say that the drills didn't coincide. They went on for 20 minutes after United 93 went down. And I was talking about the 9/11 Commission hearings. You had Myers, head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the time, admitting that they fought a lot of phantoms that day. I mean, they were chasing planes that weren't there throughout the morning. That's something most Americans don't even realize to this day. That's on the public record. As far as what else was going on in a classified perspective, do we ever get that as the American people? And is that the country we want to live in?
You never get that. And you don't get in criminal investigations either that aren't even dealing with tragedies. If the FBI wants to cover something up, or the Justice Department, it's under investigation. We can't give it to you. It's under investigation. You get that in Freedom of Information Act request responses. Again, going back to Snowden and the mass surveillance that was foisted upon the American people under Obama, which, by the way, began under George W. Bush. It wasn't Obama who started that, but he took it to a higher level with the NSA. You don't get the truth. And when we did get a judge at that time, Richard Leon, who had some cojones, who enjoined the NSA from further illegal surveillance, preliminarily enjoined it. At that point, I said, Your Honor, we've got to take discovery here. We've got to be able to delve into what's going on. And at that point, and I knew from a whistleblower that they had stuff on him, the NSA. At that point, all of a sudden, he dismisses the case after he had already ruled a likelihood of success with regard to the violation of the Fourth Amendment. So they got to him. And that's what happens, is that it's mutual assured destruction between the Democrats and Republicans. It's for show. These hearings on Capitol Hill that they have, it's dog and pony show. It's a scandal industry. You got Jim Jordan, rolled up sleeves, former, no coat, former coach at Ohio State, nearly every night on Hannity. This is what we're doing. We're doing this. We're doing that. They haven't done shit. What have they done? Other than just have a dog and pony show for the American people. They're afraid to impeach Biden. They're afraid to impeach Harris. They weren't even successful in impeaching Mayorkas, of Homeland Security over the border. It's all for show. The recent report that just came out the other day on I think it was the border. What was it? I forgot, Jason. It just came out in the last 2 days.
I believe it was the border, but then we also had the assassination report from Congress that confirmed that indeed, as you mentioned Christopher Wray earlier. Christopher Wray, again, in the halls of government, said that Crooks got off 8 shots. Now, clearly, every video, the first few shots are from one, and then it seems like it's an engagement. They said that local law enforcement did engage Crooks. Of course they did. And it seems like Crooks was incapacitated, and it's the snipers that executed him, even though he didn't have the gun in his hand at the time, because, again, that had been shot away, 5 to 10 seconds after the entire incident, after not engaging him in the beginning. Gee, that's pretty suspicious, especially,
earlier Ray said that Trump could have been hit with shrapnel, or glass, or whatever the case may be. I mean, look, this guy is corrupt top to. This is a typical Washington political appointee who is a chameleon. He's whatever shape, and he's like Zelig, Woody Allen's movie. He morphs into the shape and color and ideology of anyone who is in power. He's a butt boy. That's what he is. And that's how he keeps his job. That's how he got his job. They can control him. He's a front person. Merrick Garland, is a leftist. He is very similar, in many ways. Thank God he was never made a Supreme Court justice, which he was up to. The Republicans at least did some good there and blocked that. But who did they get instead? They got even Republican justices that frequently bail out. So the whole thing is wrapped up in a shroud of secrecy, of mutual assured destruction, of intimidation, and nothing ever is disclosed to the American people, and no one is ever held accountable. And look at Trump's assassination. What did they do? They put 4 or 5 agents on leave? Are you kidding me? They're still being paid with our money, taxpayer money. These people should be locked up for the rest of their lives. They created the condition, and they knowingly, I believe, created the condition to have President Trump assassinated. And the FBI and the intelligence agencies knew that Iran had sent a hit squad to kill Trump before that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, yet little to no security for him. They wanted it to happen. So, this is what we're dealing with. And I hope that Trump pins that on Kamala Harris in the debate, which will probably take place before this airs. But
it'll be actually, when people watch this, it'll have taken place. And, again, we pre-record these folks, but I'm looking forward to that just for the entertainment factor alone. So obviously we'll be covering that on tomorrow's show. We got to take one last break. When we come back, you've pretty much alluded to the fact that anybody in a position of power has something on them. And I'll say this, most of us are very, very imperfect beings. When you look at Trump, they look for everything and they couldn't get anything of significance. Now, I don't think that makes the guy an angel, but I definitely want to get into that aspect of it. And I want to get into the aspect of somebody that might not have any of them, but we're living in a post-truth world of deep fakes and media and political manipulation, the likes of which we've never seen. Final segment with Larry Klayman after this.
What if this happened to you when you're alone? Or what if it happened here? With MedGuard Alert, you're never alone. You can connect with medical professionals anywhere, anytime. And now MedGuard is introducing our exclusive new Care Watch. If you need help quickly, use it from anywhere to contact medical professionals. No cell phone required. The Care Watch is not only a life-saving medical alert device, it's a revolutionary health monitoring system that checks your blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen saturation, and much more. And here's the best part. If you have Medicaid, you may qualify to get your Care Watch for free. The Care Watch is only available through MedGuard Alert. Call us right now. We have monitoring programs starting as low as $1 a day. The call is free, activation is free, shipping is free, and no contract is required. Remember, with Medicaid, you may qualify to get your Care Watch for free. Don't wait. Call us to get your Care Watch right now. Operators are standing by.
Attention business owners, are you ready to advertise to millions of loyal patriots ready to buy your products or services? Here is your golden chance to advertise with Jason Burmis and connect with his massive audience on Patriot TV and his incredibly loyal social media followers. As an advertiser on Making Sense of the Madness, you also reach his followers on the top social media sites. As Jason dives into complex current events and conspiracies, offering investigative analysis and thought-provoking discussions to uncover the deeper truths behind the headlines. When you advertise with Jason on Making Sense of the Madness, you're aligning your brand with integrity, loyalty, and a dedication to truth. Jason's audience is passionate, conservative, and committed to the values your business stands for. When given the choice, Jason's followers will buy your products or services over other woke companies. Don't miss this opportunity to elevate your brand with the power of Patriot TV. Reach out to us today at advertise@patriot.tv.
And we are back. And Larry, I know I said a mouthful at the end there, but you look at what they did to Trump with the Russia stuff. Look, I'm be honest with you. From the very beginning, I said Trump was imperfect. I'll run it down the line really quick. Number one, I felt the guy was an actor. And I'm not just talking the reality show. This guy, literally, when I was a kid, I saw him running through WrestleMania, right? I always saw him on television, had a very cured persona. We all know reality TV isn't real. I said that he's a gangster. I mean, look where he made some of his money, over in Atlantic City. You don't build and run casinos without organized crime help, everybody. I mean, let's be realistic about it, right? And number three, he's a womanizer. I mean, again, 3 wives, models. What's that?
At least he likes women. At least he likes women. Okay.
Again,
in today's world,
I wasn't under the illusion that he didn't sleep with Stormy Daniels. I live in the real world, okay? All those things.
And he's got a sense of humor. Okay.
Out of all those things, he's still the way better option other than the serial killer.
You're absolutely right. And at this point, he doesn't care. Okay. It reminds me of Ricky Gervais when he went in front of the Golden Globe Awards and said, I'm going to say what I want. I don't care, in his British accent. It was great. I don't want to come back. Well, I do admire him in that respect. I don't like some of the people that hang around him, frankly. But he needs to get better people around him that don't stab him in the back and are in it for themselves. But I do admire his ability to weather the storm, and you do need somebody like that today. You have to put, and he is not selfish. He does love this country. I definitely think that's the case.
Listen, I agree. Listen, I think he really thought he was coming in there in the beginning with a big Superman cape, and this was his crescendo, right? I don't think he realized the viper's nest that he was actually going in, from sessions in the beginning to the fact they went right after the core of his campaign, the Bannon, the Flynn's, etc. I mean, we could do a whole show on that.
Well, he won't.
But now
he ain't seen. Yeah.
What's that,
Jason?
But now, again, we now live in this world, in this place where the truth is just so far away from what's presented in the mainstream, right? And, we could talk about deep fakes, but that technology is very real. The audio stuff is in real time. AI, you're essentially talking to an assistant. A lot of people are going to be falling in love with in the next couple of years. It's going to be so advanced. And these tools are going to be at the disposal of the power elite. So is everybody compromised at this point? Whether you've done something or not?
They will be. They will be. And 1984, George Orwell, Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. Read these books, okay? That was predicting where we're going here in that regard. And when Ayn Rand wrote her book in 1958, it was the rise of communism. Now that we have it big time, okay, ensconced in our body politic, and it's a very excellent book to read because you saw how she was predicting the government was going to take control of everything. Truth commissions, Orwell too, dumbing everything down, no initiative, no private initiative, everybody's the same. These kinds of things. And this is what we're headed. And then, of course, the left is trying to destroy us from within, our Judeo-Christian values. And, and I'm not a homophobe, I'm not. Do what you want to do in your house, leave the rest of us alone, okay? But the gateway to the destruction of this country was when gay marriage came into effect. That opened everything up, and now you've got, forget about gays and lesbians. Now we've got push to change kids' sex without parents knowing about it. It's become accepted, this kind of behavior. It's a hedonistic behavior. Everything goes. That's what destroyed ancient Rome and ancient Greece. So the left is trying to take control and couple that with the control that they're going to be able to take with misuse of the Justice Department and its FBI and intelligence agencies. And we, the American people, are going to be living in a complete dictatorship. Now it's a virtual dictatorship, a complete dictatorship.
Let me just stop you right there because I think there's a couple points that I want to hit on. Number one, when we talk about this insanity towards children, this transgender movement, from all my research, at the end of the day, not only are you having this government control and this cultural shift and this idea that the state gets to decide what happens to your children and that they know these identities. And you just mentioned virtual. It's really a human movement. It's this progression. I'm not sure if you're aware of who Martine Rothblatt is, but
No.
if you're not, Larry, do you know who it is?
No.
So Martine Rothblatt, wrote the book From Transgender to Transhuman. And actually back in 97, Unzipped Genes, Baby Making in the New Millennia. And is the most powerful, other than Pritzker, transgender person in the world. Multi-billionaire, actually founded SiriusXM, worked with NASA, classified programs, satellites, is the owner of United Therapeutics that is doing the xenotransplantation recently of kidneys from pigs into humans that was FDA approved. I could continue. But this is a very real thing where the more government control they have, the more that they can move us into this idea that we are not really human and there is not a God and that we're going to live forever and you can be anything that you want. And that virtual universe is also very much a part of that. There's another transhumanist out there I'd encourage you to check out, Dennis Bushnell. But, you talked about the kids. This is really what they're being indoctrinated into. You talk about the similarities, et cetera. On top of being drugged out of their minds through SSRIs, this new transgender thing,
everything, yeah.
This is the new push, and it's not just the World Economic Forum and the UN. It's a lot of people behind the scenes. And look, I thought back in the day, again, Larry, I was an ideologue. Like I thought we were going to get justice about 9/11, and up until a certain point, and I still do. I want to save this constitutional republic. I want a system of checks and balances, again, the whole nine. But after when I get into the real knee deep stuff, at the end of the day, this is what I say to people: stay human, because that's what's coming next, and they're attacking us from every angle. Go ahead.
We're creating a condition, Jason, and I hope to avoid this. I'll do my part. Okay, number one, we have a Third Continental Congress, okay, where we were meeting in Philadelphia a few years ago to declare independence, to form a new government, not a new nation. We need more political parties. We need more alternatives. We need to fine-tune the Constitution to take immunity away from government officials, things like that. Make that clear in the Constitution. But we also need to recognize that if we don't take affirmative action now, not the kind that we're talking about, on the DEI and race stuff, but affirmative action by actually doing something, not just watching Fox News or reading books, even my books, but actually doing something, that ultimately there's going to be a significant minority in this country that are going to be very, very violent. And it's going to happen on both the left and the right. If Trump gets elected, this country is going to go up in flames. If he loses, there will be a reaction on the right as well, and I trust that will not happen. I'm not advocating that, but it's going to happen. And we are headed into a potential very bloody revolution, I believe. And at that point, like happened in France after the French Revolution, which was noble in its, in its purpose, but actually went south. Okay, we will be taken over by a dictator. Okay, an absolute dictator on the left, probably. Okay, if that happens, and this is extremely, extremely dangerous for the American people, and that's if we even continue to exist. Because at this point in time, with the leadership we've had, we're one nuclear accident away from a nuclear holocaust. Frankly.
Larry, I wish we had more time to explore all that. We do not. I want to thank you for spending an hour with us here at Making Sense of the Madness. I'm sure you'll be back. I know you're a busy man. Guys, that was it. This is the 9/11 episode. You know the deal. It's not about left or right. It's always about right and wrong. Love you guys. We'll see you on the flip.